So hi there everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make this super cozy ear-warming headband. You have this lovely knotted effect at the front. There's no seam at the back. I've hooked this up in this lovely, nice, cozy ribbed effect. Now my headband is approximately 4 inches tall. I like that because I don't like to wear a hat, but I need something to cover my ears, and I find that this size is just about perfect. Now in all the examples I'm going to show you, I have used 2 strands held together. Not only does it make it nice, thick and squishy, but you get a nice sort of mottled effect to the colour. This is the one that I'm going to show you, and I'm using 2 strands of a double knit weight yarn. Now this one here, I have used a double knit weight and an Aran weight yarn. And what I've done, if you can see, one of the yarns is a variegated yarn, so the colour changes all the way through, and then the other colour is just a solid, so you get quite a nice changeable effect there. Okay, and that's come out slightly bulkier. Now this one here is just super chunky. I've used 2 balls of yarn, the same colour, but they are super bulky, and I've used a size 6mm hook. This has come up really chunky. Now I've also added a faux leather label to mine. I just do this to personalise these if I'm giving these away as gifts. Now I found this one on Etsy, and I can just pop a link in the comments down below as to where I found that, but there are plenty that you can buy on Etsy, and I've simply sewn along. You can see it's the same both sides using a thread. But as I say, this is the one that I'm going to show you how to make, so let's get going. So I'm going to be using these lovely pinky purple shades. Both of these yarns are acrylic. Now I would suggest, if you're using 2 strands in a project, that you make them the same fibre content, just in case you're going to want to wash whatever it is that you're making. Now these headbands, you can just sling them in the wash, that's fine. But if you mix your fibre content, then one fibre may shrink, whereas the other doesn't, and it might make it go all a bit out of shape. So I'm sticking to acrylic. I'm using 2 balls of double knit weight yarn, which is a weight 3. This one here, I know, both of these are from my stash. This one here I know is a Starcraft Special DK in the colourway Boysenberry. Now this one I believe I actually bought from Hobbycraft. It's a Women's Institute yarn. Now I've looked online, unfortunately they don't do this colourway anymore, and I can't remember what the colour was called. I think it was Heather, something like that, but you can get a similar shade with the Starcraft Special DK, so you can use whatever colours you'd like. Now normally with a double knit I use a size 4mm hook, but for this project as I'm using 2 strands, I'm going to go up to a 5mm hook, which is also a size H. Now I use my Clover Amour hooks, which, as you know, these are my favourite hooks to use. You will need a darning needle to darn in your ends. You're going to need a small pair of scissors, and you're going to need a tape measure so that you can measure around your head. So the first thing you need to do is measure your head, or whoever you're making this for. Now, just for a guide, my head circumference is 23 inches. So I've started at the top of my head, gone all the way round and then finished at the top again. But I'm just going to show you now as an example on my polystyrene head lady. So you need to hold your tape measure just in the centre of your head at the top here. Then you're going to go all the way down. So I make sure that I go down to the bottom of my head at the back here, and then I know that my ears are going to be nicely covered, and then go round the other side and then meet up here, and that's where you're going to take your measurement from. So as I say, my circumference is 23 inches. But what I'm going to do, because I do need this to give a little, I want it to be reasonably snug and tight on my head. You don't want them too loose because, especially with acrylic, it will get too baggy and then it'll start falling down. So my actual head circumference is 23, but I'm going to do my starting chain for 22 inches, so slightly smaller. So here we go, just remembering that we're using these 2 strands as one, okay? So I'm going to start by putting a slip knot on my hook. I'll show you how I do this. You can use whatever method you prefer. Now I wrap the yarn around those 2 fingers, pull the yarn across, then I go under that part, grab my yarn, pull through, take my fingers out, and I'm on. Okay, so now we need to do a chain of the measurement. My measurement, I've decided I'm going to do 22 inches, which when I counted on my example was, just for your reference, 77 stitches. Okay, so I need to make a chain of 77. So I will leave you to do the chain for whatever your circumference was, remembering that we took 1 inch off. Now I'm going to chain up 77 and then I'll meet you back here. So I've done my chain of 77 stitches. Now I would suggest that again you just hold this around your head. You will need to put it just a little bit, not too much, to make sure that it fits nicely. And what I would suggest also, after a couple of rows, do the same thing, because you'd rather find out that maybe you've got your measurement wrong after just a couple of rows rather than when we've done the whole thing. It's a little bit too late then. So it does pay just to keep checking that it's not going to be too loose or too tight. So row 1, we are simply going to do a row of UK double crochet. Now that's US single crochet. So in this second loop from your hook, I'm just going to start. So double crochet is we push through, grab the yarn, pull it through, so we have 2 loops on our hook, grab that yarn, pull through 2. Okay, so all we're going to do for row 1 is simply work along our chain using our double crochets. So I've worked all the way along the chain doing those double crochets, so we've finished our row 1, and this is how we're going to do row 2. I'm going to do a chain 1 up, then I'm going to flip my work. Now what we're going to do for row 2 and for the next 8 rows after that, so basically for the next 9 rows, we're going to be working using half treble crochets. So that's UK half trebles, US half doubles. We're also going to be working in the back loop only. So if I show you, it might be a little bit more difficult if you're not used to using 2 strands, but you will get used to it. So the V along the top, normally we go through the whole of that V, but for this pattern we're just going to use the back loop only. So you can see I'm going in the back loop of that V. So just a recap for your half trebles, we're going to yarn over first, go through that back loop, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then you have 3 loops on your hook. Remember that these 2 strands are used as one. So I have 1, 2, 3 loops on my hook. Grab that yarn, pull it through all 3 loops. I'll show you that again. So it's yarn over, working in that back loop only. Grab the yarn, pull it through, so you have 3 loops. Grab the yarn, pull through all 3 loops. So this is how we're going to work along for our row 2, putting in our half trebles in those back loops only. So just take your time if you're not used to using 2 strands as one. You want to make sure that you are catching both strands, otherwise you're going to end up with a little bit of a hole. So carry along, this is row 2 and I will meet you at the end. So I've worked all the way along my row 2. Now this would be an ideal time. Just double check that you have your measurements right. So just hold this around your head before we carry on. So once you have done that, we're now going to repeat row 2 for a further 8 rows. Okay, so chain 1 up, turn your work, and then working in those back loops, we're going to be putting our half trebles. So we're going to be doing this for a further 8 rows. So in all you'll have 1 row of double crochet and then 9 rows of half trebles working in those back loops. So I'm going to go ahead and work a further 8 rows doing these half trebles, and I will meet you when those are completed. So I have gone ahead and finished my 9 rows of my half trebles. So you can see you have this lovely ribbed thick effect. So this should be nice and cozy on your ears. Now we are going to finish how we started by doing 1 more row of just double crochet. So I'm going to chain 1 up. I'm then going to flip my work. I'm still going to work in those back loops only all the way along, doing double crochet, and what you will find is that it just finishes it off the same as we started, so it looks nice and neat along the top. So carry along, your last row is going to be double crochet. So I've got to the end of that final row of double crochets, and then I've left a nice end, I don't know, 20-25 inches. I'm still going to be using 2 strands at once when I sew together. Obviously this is going to be too much yarn, but I'd rather have too much than too little. So in all, for this example, we have a total of 11 rows. So just to recap, we started with a row of double, we did 9 half trebles in the back loops, and then we finished with a row of doubles in the back loops. Okay, so now we're just going to join this together. So this is going to be my right side. You can see these double crochets sit nice and neatly. If I show you the back, you can see the difference. Okay, they sit nice and flat. So this is the right side, and you want to sew this together with your right sides together facing, but each side we are going to fold in half. Okay, now if you've got some pins or some clips, you could always just, whilst we're doing that, you could clip them together, but I'm just going to hold them together with my fingers. Now this original tail we will weave in once we've finished. So this is going to be like this. I'm going to do the same with this end, so you can see both ends. I've just folded them into the middle. So we're going to bring these ends together, and this is how they will fit together. Okay, so it's a bit like a zigzagged effect. So you can see we have that effect here. So I'm going to just do that again. Now I automatically wanted to do that, but I want this end to start at the top. Okay, so I've got both of my edges are folded together, and they are going to come together like so. Okay, so my left hand edge is this part here, my right hand edge is this part here, and they're forming this sort of like S shape. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, and what we're going to do now is we're going to use this long tail here to sew all the layers together, being sure to catch each layer in as we go along. So as you can see, I've threaded up my darning needle, and as I said, I'm still using the 2 strands as one. And what we're now going to do is sew these layers together. So I'm already knotted off on the first layer. I'm going to be working on the edge, making sure I'm picking up a stitch of the second layer. Keep going through, making sure I'm grabbing that first stitch of the third layer, and then a stitch as far over on this edge as I can of the fourth layer, and then I'm just going to pull that all the way through. Then I'm going to move along, and as you can see, I'm going through in reverse, making sure I'm picking up stitches of each layer. It's very important, otherwise your knot is not going to work. It's going to look too scrappy. So what I'm going to do is work all the way along the edge. I like to get a few strands on, as this is quite a bulky fabric that we've made here. I'm going to make sure I'm going through, make sure there's a couple of strands there of each stitch and of each layer. Okay, then I'm just going to go back through, making sure again, oops, it's falling out, making sure again that, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, making sure you're capturing all of those layers. So we're just going to carry on, and again up here you're going to find the end stitch of this layer that's sort of sandwiched in between, and make sure you do pick up that last stitch as well. Okay, so just carry on sewing your layers together. So I've gone all the way along, and I'm happy that I've caught all the layers. What I'm going to do, just to reinforce, okay, is I'm just going to go back along the other way. Now, because this is now tight, you may not be able to see all of the layers, but you will now have, you'll have got an idea of where the edges are. But as long as that first row, you're happy that that was nice and secure, I'm just going to reinforce by just going back along, and I'm going to finish here. So I've sewn back along, and then I'm quite happy that that's nice and secure. So all I'm going to do is use one of these stitches. I'm going to knot off. Obviously I've left my end too long. There we go. So I'm just going to knot off. You could do a couple of knots there just to make it nice and secure. And then I'm just going to weave in my end. So I'm just going to pick up some of these stitches along. Just remember, we're now working on the inside of the headband, so you're not really going to see these stitches at all. So I'm going to go along using some of these stitches. I'm going to go along one way. Then I'm going to weave my ends along the other way. And then I tend to do the rule of 3, and then I'm just going to use those stitches to weave in along that way again. Then I'm just going to cut off. Make sure you don't cut your work. So I'm going to do the same with this original tail that we have here, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like the right way round. So I've just sewn in my ends there, and then all we need to do, I normally start at the back, is flip our headband the right way around. And there you go, you have that lovely knotted effect at the front. Nobody can see where you've joined. So there you go, a lovely cosy ear warmer headband for you.